Yes. Is it in descending order? Greatest common factor?
No.
Negative leading coefficient?
No.
Special product? I have to check. Because if it is, and I move on to strategy number 6, it will take me much longer. So, what would you expect? Very good. Now we have to check what? The middle term. Very good. What would be the middle term here? 2 times 6 times x, which is 12x. If the left-hand side doesn't have 12x, I have to erase this. Good. So then I'm down to strategy 6 or 7? 6, because the leading coefficient is?
3.
The leading coefficient is?
1.
The leading coefficient is?
1.
1. Very good. So then we are looking for two numbers whose product is? Very good. And whose sum must be? Very good. I wrote them in a different order now. So we always look at the product first. Because the product is positive, both numbers have to have the same sign. Are we in agreement with that? Yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Good. Good. But now since their sum is positive, what sign do they have to have?
Negative.
The same one.
One more time. The product is positive.
Yeah.
They either have to be both positive or both negative.
Right.
But their sum is positive. So what can they be?
Oh, positive.
Both positive, mandatory. Is this clear? Ruby?
Yeah, because all the signs are positive.
It's positive 36. Either are both positive or both negative, but their sum is positive.
Oh. So
They must be positive. Otherwise the sum will be negative.
negative.
Okay, very good. Can we come up with two numbers, positive numbers, whose sum is 13 and whose product is 36?
Is it 6 plus?
No.
No, it's not. 6. Six plus 7. No.
Four and 9.
So give me the factor form, please. Very good. Okay. X squared plus 13x plus 42. What type of polynomial is this?
Try.
Trinomial indeed. Descending order.
Yes.
Greatest common factor in all three.
No.
Negative leading coefficient. Special product.
Mm-hmm.
I always hope for a special product, but first and last have to be perfect squares. If they are not perfect squares, I have to move on to strategy 6 or 7. Are they both perfect squares?
Additional.
Yes. So 42 is a perfect square?
No.
No. So then I cannot use a special product.
Oh, so you got 2.
So I have to move on to strategy 6 or 7, depending on the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient,
6.
yes, because the leading coefficient is
1.
good. So then I need two numbers whose product is
Bottom.
What is it?
42, yeah.
and whose sum is
13.
very good. Can we find two numbers whose product is 40? Okay, I'm sorry, forgive me. So the product is positive. So numbers have to be either both positive or both negative. Otherwise, I will not get a positive product. But their sum is positive. So they both must be positive. Can we find two positive numbers? Who is very good? So can anyone then give us the factored form of this trinomial?
X plus 6, X plus 7.
If you ever want to check, it will take you 5-10 seconds. X squared plus 7x plus 6x plus 42. Okay? Very good. Let's look at the next one. 6y squared minus y minus 1. What type of polynomial is this?
All right.
Awesome. Is it in descending order?
Yes.
Greatest common factor?
No,
Negative leading coefficient?
no,
Special product?
no.
Perfect. First of all, this is not a perfect square, and secondly, there is a negative here. Strategy 6?
Strategy 7.
Strategy 7. Different situation, so be careful now, please. This is the most difficult one. It is a strategy 7 because this is not 1. That's why. It's the last chance. If strategy 7 doesn't work, then I will write prime or not factorable. Okay? Ready? If I had 1 here, if I had 1, I would have said the sum must be, I'm looking for two numbers whose sum is, yes, and whose product is, right. The sum does not change. In strategy 6 and strategy 7, the sum is the same number. However, now in the product, because the leading coefficient is no longer 1, it has to be incorporated. Now this is the product. If the leading coefficient is not 1, that leading coefficient has to be multiplied by the last coefficient. So the product is negative 6. Every time the leading coefficient is not 1, the product is no longer the last term, the last coefficient, but 6 times the last coefficient. Okay, we start with the product. I look at the product and I see it's negative. So what type of numbers am I looking for? When I multiply two positive numbers, I do not get a negative number. When the product is negative, I'm looking for,
One negative, one positive.
that's it. Is that clear? Okay, perfect. So let's find two numbers whose product is negative 6. One is positive and the other one is negative. Whose product is negative 6 and whose sum is negative 1. If you say that those numbers don't exist, I'm done. I'll say prime and we move on to the next problem. Say it again. Which one is negative? I need one negative and one positive. Awesome. Do you all agree with negative 3 and positive 2? Is this product negative 6? Both conditions have to be fulfilled, not just one. Is this product negative 6?
Yes.
Is the sum negative 1?
Yes.
Good. Now pay attention to the next step, which is very different from everything we've done so far. Because the leading coefficient is not 1, I have to change the problem using these numbers into the new problem that you see here. 6y squared plus 2y minus 3y and minus 1. So I replaced this term with what you gave me. Is it true? Am I changing the problem, or the problem is the same but it looks differently? So 2y minus 3y, is it still negative y?
Yes.
If you go back and combine them, you're going backwards instead of moving forward. I need 4 terms. Why? because the next step is called factoring by grouping. Factoring by grouping. And please pay attention to what I'm doing. You have to walk around with a wide eye. No, I'm kidding. Okay, look at the first two terms. And please tell me, it's a binomial, and there is a common factor. What is the common factor that we have to pull out from 6y squared plus 2y? What else? Yes, 2y. What is left in parentheses? I know that there are two more terms in there. I did not forget about them. So what will you pull out? 2y. And what is left in parentheses? Sorry. Say it again. If 2y times y is 6y squared, then I'll say yes. But 2y times y is not 6y squared. Yes? 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 2y times y will not be 2y plus 1. Do you all agree with 3y plus 1 in parentheses? Okay. What has to come out in parentheses from the other two terms before I even look? So I can continue.
2y.
Exactly. They have to be identical. If they're not identical, I'm in trouble. I will copy it before I even look. Of course, I cannot fabricate it. If it's not there, I have a mistake somewhere. But it has to be there. And now please tell me two things. One, I want a sign. And the other one, I want a factor. Look at these two terms and tell me what comes out here so that blah times 3y is that and blah times 1 is that. Negative 1. So the sign is negative and the factor is 1. Final step. Final step. This is the common factor now. This is what goes in front. And now you tell me, when you take this out, what is left from the first term? I took this out. What is left from the first term?
2y.
Now I have to copy the symbol. From this term, when I pull out 3y plus 1, what is left? 1. Don't trust anything, at least at the beginning. Okay, let's do this together. 3y times 2y, 6y squared. 3y times negative 1, negative 3y plus 2y, negative y. And positive 1 times negative 1, negative 1. I know that this is the correct form. As you see, the last strategy is the most involving, the most difficult in a way, or cumbersome, and it has tons of steps. So let's look at another example. 4x squared minus 4x minus 15. Okay. What polynomial is this? Good. Is it in descending order? Greatest common factor in all three. Negative leading coefficient. Special product. I always hope for a special product. Anything.
No, that's a negative.
Right. Is strategy 6 applicable here? I hope for that one, because at least I don't have to go through the whole long procedure. No, unfortunately, it's the last one. Good. So then I'm looking for two numbers whose product is and whose sum is. Let's start with the sum, because the sum never changes. Regardless, the sum is?
Negative 1. No, negative 15.
The sum is indeed negative 4. And how do we get the product? We said there is something specific now about the product. The product in strategy 7 is not the last term.
It's the first one.
Times the last one. It was 6 in the previous example times -1 was -6. Now I have 4 as the leading coefficient and -15. So what is the product?
So,
-60. So since the product is negative, what type of numbers am I looking for? One positive and one negative. Awesome. Good. Let's try and find two numbers, a positive and a negative. When I multiply them, I get -60. And when I add them, I get -4. And there's only one such pair. If I find one and it works, you cannot find another that works. If a polynomial is factorable, there is only one way of factoring it. You cannot find one and I find another. Although, to be exact, there are situations in which, and I can give examples next time. Remind me to give an example in which a polynomial can be factored into two different ways. Do we have two numbers? -10 and +6. Awesome. Let's check. Both conditions have to be fulfilled. Is 6 minus 10 -4?
Yes.
Is 6 times -4 -60?
yes.
6.
6 times -10 is -60. 6 minus 10 is -4.
Oh, yeah.
Both conditions are fulfilled. What do I do next?
You add
I'm replacing the middle term,
with the answer
4x squared. What do I write?
6
Plus 6
minus
x. It has to be x, otherwise I will not get the -4x. And then,
minus 8 minus
good. What procedure do I use now? It's called
grouping.
grouping, factoring by grouping. From the first two, what will you pull out? Yes,
2x
very good. What is left in parentheses?
2x
Yes,
plus
yes,
3x.
all 3. What should I have coming out from the other two before I even look? Because if I look, I may write something else. Who knows what I'm going to put in there? I have to copy it first. Please copy. To be on the safe side, please copy it first. And now look and tell me two different things. I need a sign and a factor. If you forget the sign, you mess up the problem. So I need sign and factor, please. Do you all agree with -5? Don't trust it? Let's do it. -5 times 2x is that -10x. -5 times 3 is that -15. Once I found these two numbers, whose product is this and whose sum is this, the polynomial is factorable for sure. If I can't find these, the polynomial is not factorable. But once I found it, I will come up with a factored form. So what is common now to this term and to this term, that goes out. What is left? Any questions?